All right, how to grow a portfolio. Now, a lot of people say to me, Damien, that's great, I'd love to have a portfolio, but I don't know how to start. Well, the first thing we do is we start with our first property. And if I had to start from scratch, what would I do? I'll tell you what I would do, is I would go so I've got nothing, I would go to a family member who's got equity or cash, and I'd say, please lend me the money. Please lend me $50,000. And they'd say, what do you want it for? I said, well, I don't want to go on a holiday. I don't want to blow it. I want to buy a property. And if they've got property themselves, they will support you, okay, as long as they trust you. But if no one loved me enough to lend me the money, then what I would do is for 1 year of my life, and I'm very, very serious about this, because until you own property, you are sitting in the grandstand watching everyone else play the game, and you will always be poor until you own real assets that are paying you an income. So of my 80-something years that I'm expected to live on this earth, I'd take 1 year and I'd work a full-time day job and a part-time night job, and I'd live on Weetabix and cheese sandwiches and 2-minute noodles, and I would save every red cent I had until I had a deposit. I'd still go to parties, but instead of taking expensive spirits and champagne and wine, I'd just take a 6-pack of VB stubbies, put them in the esky, and then drink everyone else's drinks. Instead of taking my girlfriend out for dinner, I'd pack a picnic basket and a blanket and go lay on the side of the river. And any of the ladies will tell you that that's going to score far more points than going to an expensive restaurant anyway. Just for 1 year of your life, do what it takes to get on the field. And once you've got that first property, you're away. You don't need to live like that anymore. You can quit the night job. You can go back to living a normal life like everyone else. Okay? But get that property, do whatever it takes. If you're not prepared to do whatever it takes, that's fine. You're just going to be poor for the rest of your life. Okay? I'd go and get that property, and I'd put a 10% deposit down, and I'd get a 90% loan. In time, that property is going to go up in value. When it goes up in value, the 90% line will change, and my loan will still be the same at interest only. So now I have what's called available equity. I've got $63,000 of available equity because I can borrow up to 90%. So I go to my bank and I get a second loan against the property for 63 grand, and I use the cash that I get from that loan to pay the deposit and costs on another property. So now I don't need to use any of my own money. So if you already own a property, then you could buy an investment property right now with using none of your own cash. And then we get a loan against the property itself for the rest of the money we need. This is how property investors grow their portfolios. Now, if we want to grow a portfolio quickly, what do we have to do? Well, we have to pick, every time we pick a property, we've got to make sure we pick one in a location that is booming. Because if the location is booming, we'll be able to get onto our next property faster. So one property becomes 2, 2 will then become 4, 4 will become 8, 8 will become 16, 64, and so on. Now, one of my mentors, when he was 30 years of age, he had 5 properties, but he got divorced and he lost them all in the divorce. So he said, I'll be fine, I'll start from scratch. By the time he got to 57, he had something like 75 properties. So in the space of 27 years, he acquired 75 properties. But what he said to me, he said, Damo, you've got to understand it's exponential growth. 1 becomes 2, 2 become 4, 4 become 8. You don't just put 1 on every year. In the early days, it's slow. It might be 3 years between your first and your second property. But then it'll be half the time to get to the third because you've got 2 properties working for you, and they should be able to get the equity you need in half the time as a result. And then as it goes, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So, and what he said to me is that 2/3 of those properties were put on in the last 1/3 of the time. Where he had 75 properties. So what he was saying is in 27 years, he said the last 50 of those properties were put on in the last 9 years. It's exponential growth. And you hear about these people who own entire apartment buildings or do developments and things like that, and you wonder where they got the money from. They're just people who've known these rules longer than you have and have been playing the game longer than you have. Okay? If you've got nothing right now, you can be that person who in the future is owned 75 properties. If you've got nothing right now, you can be that person. Step 1 is get the money for your first deposit and borrow it if you can, or just live like a pauper for a year until you've got it. Step 2 is then just get smart about what you buy and leap from one to the other, and eventually you'll be doing ridiculously well.
Hi, Damien here. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you'd like to learn more about property investing, or maybe you're already investing in property and you want to make sure you're doing it right, click on the link below and go and watch the full webinar. In that webinar is everything I think a property investor needs to know if they want to be successful in investing in property. I'm going to talk to you about how to grow your portfolio quickly, but also, more importantly, safely, so that you don't stick your neck out too far and you're protected from anything that could go wrong. If you're investing in property and you haven't watched it, invest the time. It'll be the best decision you make in a long time. Cheers.